As a bioengineering major, I understand the skepticism surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. I'd like to offer the perspective that DEI is about demographically comparing the proportion of society at large to the demographic proportions within our organization. Differences between the external and internal population proportions indicate the presence of structural barriers to participation within our organization. If 12% of the American population is black, for example, and 0% of our leadership is black, this indicates that there are structural barriers to untapped talent. Non-Hispanic Americans of African descent have incomes that are on average half of what non-Hispanic white Americans make. 100% of the leaders at Calico Labs have graduate degrees, so it is evident that the cutting-edge research being done here requires the highest qualifications. Yet, Americans of African descent have the lowest 6-year graduation rate of any racial demographic, 44%. And this is primarily due to a mix of familial and financial responsibilities and hardships while attending higher education. 21% of African Americans live below the poverty line, and this poverty is rooted in historically accumulated disadvantage as the result of post-emancipation Jim Crow laws, redlining, and racial policies. Would you have the tremendous success in education you have fought so dearly and hard for if your great-grandparents were sold a fake deed, as was not uncommon in the early 20th century, or segregated in an area that didn't receive funding for high schools due to redlining, or that acted as industrial waste dumping sites? Diversity means recognizing the unique talents possessed by everyone and acknowledging that we tend to hire and promote those who look and act like us, who live by our own rules and values, and shun those who do not through the structural barriers discussed above. Meritocracy is discrimination exceptionalism, a concept that exists to justify certain forms of discrimination over others. There is nothing that would disqualify someone from a position within our company that is not rooted in deep systemic violence and discrimination. If someone lacks qualifications, it is due to the economic, familial, and historical prejudices discussed earlier. If someone is simply lazy, it is likely the result of a combination of poor nutrition, lack of exercise, chronic stress and fatigue, poor education, mental illness, or competing external responsibilities such as family obligations. Historically, laziness has been used to justify slavery and every other form of systemic injustice. It may seem convenient to pretend that the same genius can come from every single person. But consider that when Monsanto attempted to revolutionize Indian agriculture with Western rice, using Western science, it proved disastrous in its attempts to expand into India. The Western rice seeds were poorly accustomed to droughts and floods, the usual seasons in rice-growing parts of India. Had Monsanto consulted local Indian farmers, many famines in India could have been avoided. Diverse people will bring diverse perspectives into Calico Labs. The groundbreaking research into longevity that Calico Labs is doing needs all the innovative, novel perspectives it can muster. And diversity means providing equity to include these perspectives. Yes, meritocracy, on one hand, is almost invariably used to justify discrimination and exceptionalism. However, if one accepts that everyone merits the right to live their life to their fullest potential, participating enthusiastically and consensually in their every endeavor, including in our company, should they so desire, then it becomes imperative to help them do that. Merit is a model discussing how opportunities for innovative diversity can be included in a high-stakes company like Calico Labs. It consists of measure, elevate, require, identify, and treat. Measure means to make quantifiable records of things such as sexual harassment reports, as well as creating quantifiable, transparent goals for promotions or advancement. A lack of reports related to sexual harassment, for example, indicates poor DEI participation. So, measuring whenever possible is important to any DEI effort. Elevate means to intertwine DEI efforts and authority with high-powered positions such as CEO positions, which encourages corporate accountability instead of allowing discrimination to be passed off as bad apples. Require means asking employees to report how they have participated in DEI and to point out instances of discrimination they witness without fear and tie this to promotions within the company as part of performance. This will break the widespread, discriminatory norm of promoting those who must be convinced about the importance of DEI attaining positions of power, while punishing those who are enthusiastic about DEI. seeing DEI as a lofty philosophy or business or busy work is discriminatory. Therefore, identifying who participates meaningfully, such as, for example, black women and other underrepresented people, which are more likely to participate in DEI efforts, and treating them as meritorious through financial and positional rewards, up to and including CEO positions, would help build a culture of seeing DEI as meaningful paid work, because DEI should be paid as part of the mundane work activities that happens in any place of employment, instead of as a trifle. DEI is something a company does instead of solely a value. DEI creates social responsibility between companies and the communities they seek to benefit. 3 out of 9 employees in Calico Labs leadership are women. That's 33%, which is exactly the percentage of women in leadership and management positions across American companies. Calico Labs has a human resource department as part of its leadership, which means that the groundwork for the elevate portion of merit, discussed earlier, is already underway. Employees at Calico Labs receive generous compensation packages starting at around $120,000 and going well over $400,000. According to MIT Living Wage Calculator, a single mother of 2 living in California would need to make roughly $130,000 after tax in order to support herself and her children. For those of you not from California, this figure, the livable wage needed for a single mother of 2 in Pullman, is roughly $91,000. The figures in MIT's calculations include things like transportation, housing, childcare, medical, internet, and phones, but could also use the addition of other things such as elderly care, funeral expenses, emergency savings, recreation, insurance, medical insurance, and many other things taken for granted. Calico Labs is close to paying a livable wage for a single mother, with a graduate degree and experience. Calico Labs also offers new postdoctorate graduates who have made meaningful contributions in their field of study and who have completed a first author paper that has been published in their respective field. They offer them the Calico Postdoctoral Fellowship Program. The Calico Postdoctoral Fellowship Program is a fellowship program that funds and directs a 4-year research project discussed and agreed upon before the prospective postdoctoral graduate and Calico Labs. They agree on it and they work on it. The aim of the Calico Postdoctoral Fellowship Program is to initiate early graduates into a career of longevity science. Mentorship, such as the Calico Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, is an integral part of DEI initiatives as it helps create a pathway to success for people who may otherwise be struggling to apply themselves. Calico Lab's roster of biographied employees working in its 2 biggest departments, leadership and research and development staff, includes 47 employees. 23% of these 47 employees is Asian, 0% are Hispanic, and 0% are black, and 77% are white. The national proportion of Asians working in senior executive levels is 6%, and in this regard, Calico Labs has surpassed this threefold. Attrition modeling can be used to measure DEI processes and progress. Attrition in relationship to DEI efforts represents what percentage of employees are let go from a company. Attrition looks at the proportion of a particular demographic of people within society at large, and then looks at the demographic makeup of their corporate population, preferably by sector, and then seeks to make hiring and layoff decisions based upon those models, recognizing that letting go of people based purely upon colorblind merit leads to homogenized workplaces through discrimination exceptionalism. A company using attrition modeling will seek to keep the proportion of different, widely recognized demographic groups within the corporation in line with the population at large. Incongruency and proportionality between corporate demographic makeup and society is a red flag, signaling internal discriminatory bias. Measuring DEI progress would also include measuring performance reviews and comparing them to demographic models described when discussing attrition. If certain people are getting more favorable reviews than others consistently, it's time to stop and ask why. Even if the discontent is superficially seen as justified, such as being late or having poor performance, it is important to note that these things also likely stem from historical demographic inequalities, perhaps even ones that we may struggle to identify. If someone is late, is it really because they are not committed to the job? Or is it possible that they are having difficulty getting good sleep due to undiagnosed medical conditions or newborn children? Even if they are not committed to the job, to a degree it is important to recognize that work-life balance is required for the health of the individual, the family, and society at large. And what individuals can meaningfully contribute without skewing this balance varies based upon many factors, such as their external responsibilities to children, parents, and self-care. 70% of workers surveyed were affected by weaponized incompetence from work environments that pushed people past what they were enthusiastically willing to contribute. It's important to keep in mind that discrimination is insidious and often takes on the form of legitimate forms of discrimination, referred to as discriminatory exceptionalism, mentioned earlier. Legitimate forms of discrimination are as harmful, if not more harmful, to historically underrepresented groups than other more overt types of discrimination. It is also more complicated than simply checking to see if someone belongs to a non-protected class and then firing them for poor performance reviews indiscriminately. Almost everyone belongs to some kind of protected or historically underprivileged class, and being willing to punch up invariably punches down against that group of people or other groups of people and sets precedents that will disproportionately harm other minority groups. The same quantification and measuring methods I've just discussed should also be applied in comparing various groups' pay, promotions, mentorships, and benefits packages. Ideally, employees will feel comfortable bringing difficulties they have to their employers or to the appropriate departments. However, history has shown us that oftentimes the people most discriminated against, abused, and harassed are the people least likely to make these reports. It is important to encourage DEI participation on the individual level by advocating for others and seeing not only where discrimination is happening, but identifying where it is happening. The challenge here is in being ready to hear the truth. Discrimination is all around us. Being ready to hear the truth, which will be demonstrated by the measurement methods discussed above, will embolden employees to make their discomfort known, as well as to advocate for others. Doing so gives Calico Labs the opportunity to address equity in ways that no other company has done before. Having a human resource department with 0 complaints should be seen as a red flag. Employees should routinely be asked how they participated in DEI, and DEI efforts should have clear paths to promotion and equity within the company. Building a just workforce will involve picking up social responsibility, and that is a mighty task. Once employers are able to see the difference between which groups of people are being abused, which are being hired, fired, paid, promoted, or benefited, they will be able to begin asking hard questions related to why this is the case. Attrition modeling would suggest that Calico Labs should take stock of various demographic groups within their corporation. These groups would include at least race, gender, sexual orientation, sex, economic class, educational status, ability, and religion. With this in mind, it currently looks like Calico Labs can benefit from identifying methods by which they can incorporate racial minorities such as blacks, Hispanics, and Middle Easterners, more women, different sexual orientations, people with disabilities, people with mental illnesses, people from different religions, educational statuses, and economic backgrounds, at the very least. DEI experts can be used to help identify what some common themes might be in areas where employees may have difficulty coming forward with their difficulties initially due to the stoic nature of contemporary workplaces and professional environments. However, ultimately the goal should be for employers and employees to magnanimously discuss the inequities we've just understood how to measure. In previous slides, we discussed examples of employees who are late habitually. Discussing tardiness with an employee gently should reveal motivations for the tardiness and help inform possible solutions. Perhaps the negative impact on work performance by the newborn babies crying could be reduced if the mother received a stipend for childcare during the day and transportation to work, as well as designated napping areas where employees can nap without fear of reproach. Perhaps a corporate chef could prepare meals for employees to take home with them for their family to reduce the strain on families and improve work-life balance. Calico Labs could foster diversity by recognizing the enormous privilege required to be an employee at such a cutting-edge and prestigious company at Calico Labs. In doing so, Calico Labs could extend their generous fellowship program to bachelor students or create scholarship pipelines to higher education in poor neighborhoods or historically black colleges. Some employees already make $400,000 a year, so investing a few $100,000 to train a dozen students from racial minority groups, for example, would quickly pay for itself in less than a decade and create racial integration in areas surrounding Calico Labs in California, as well as pipelines to success in poor neighborhoods. An important part of DEI is documenting the logistical limitations of trying to remain competitive, while focusing on increasing equity, should there be reasons why this would be cost prohibitive. No business should be expected to martyr itself for the benefit of others. Calico Labs is in a position in which it can volunteer its DEI findings to other companies and encourage them to do the same, and create compacts between each other and form truces on the basis of creating equity for their employees. If that is still insufficient, communicating with government organizations, backed by other government contract research groups like Calico Labs, will help bring government attention into leveling the playing field for all corporations with no disadvantage to the individual companies involved. Expanding access to Calico Labs means expanding access to its competitors and to longevity research as an industry. Surely a nation of researchers and scientists will produce more breakthroughs than discrete powerhouses alone. Equity is in line with the breakthroughs Calico Labs wishes to see in the world. As a final word, I'd like to remind you that idolizing and deifying minority inclusion as an end in of itself often ends up missing the mark for DEI. The goal is not to hire minorities because it is the nice thing to do or because it is profitable, but because minorities not being included indicates that there are people out there who would be contributing to longevity research if they had the opportunity that do not have the opportunity to do so. DEI is about more than warm and fuzzy feelings, and is about building a functional community and society built upon consent. Demographic analysis is only one way to identify structural barriers in society at large. Ultimately, every single individual has the inherent right to live their life to the fullest, and DEI is the way forward for Calico Labs, for America, and for the world. Thank you so much for your time.